did we begin symbolic culture 30,000 years ago or so. So let me present to you the acceleration of the ages. The first step of separation. Well, I mean, you could take it back to the cell, to life itself, to the first homeostatic organism that creates a boundary between self and other. Okay, and I do take it back there in the book, but let's just go back 3 million years, give or take a few million, when we started to make stone tools. This was the first step in separation because the first artificial object was created. If you're an archaeologist, you know, and you dig one up, you know this was made by human beings. This is not a natural object. So the realm of the human began to diverge from the realm of the natural. 3 million years. Now, the next step, about 300,000 years ago, the age of fire began. Give or take a few 100,000 years. I won't go into the debate among archaeologists about this, but let's just say 300,000 years ago we started using fire. This is another step in separation because fire allows us to master the wild. It creates a circle of domesticity. It creates a boundary. That circle of the campfire creates a boundary. Animals won't go near it. And it creates a boundary between the domestic and the wild, between the safe and the unsafe, from the collective perspective, between self and other. This is the human realm. Outside of it is the natural realm, where the shadows are, where it's dangerous. "30,000 years ago, symbolic culture, the origin of language. Again, very controversial. Some people think it's much earlier. But symbolic culture is another step in distancing because now we create this layer of names, of symbols between us and reality. To name something is to master it. It's to bring it into your world, your conceptual world. Once you've done that, conceptually, the next step is very natural. Domestication. First you make it yours by naming it, and then you actually domesticate it. You make it yours by controlling it, by corralling it, by planting it, by pulling up the weeds. So this is a further step of separation from nature. And with agriculture, many new concepts are born. For example, good and evil, basically unknown before domestication. But now the wolf becomes evil, the sheep becomes good, the weeds become evil, the crops become good, and with population growth we become dependent on nature, dependent on the whim, we're at the whims of these natural forces which can destroy the crops. And we begin to make sacrifices, and gradually divinity abandons the earth and moves up to the sky. So that's 3,000 years ago. So you see a pattern here? 3,000 years, give or take a few thousand, okay? In some places 100 years ago, in some places maybe 10,000 years ago. So 3 million, 300,000, 30,000, 3,000, 300 years ago we have the age of the machine. And we begin living in a world that's not only is it domesticated, it's completely different from the rest of the natural world. We live in a world of squares and hard things, and machines that have power that no natural object has. 1,000 horsepower engine. And we create a wholly artificial environment. So that's the next step of separation. 30 years ago, the age of information, the virtual age. Now, not only are we divorced from natural, soft, organic things, we're divorced from materiality altogether. And we live in this, to some extent, in a virtual world where all that's really happening is these bits moving around. That's 30 years into the information age. So this acceleration is happening. Now, is there going to be some mini age of 3 years starting right about now, and then 3 months, and then 3 days, So it's reaching a singularity as something. And I think that we can all sense the imminence more momentous than the transition from hunter-gathering to agriculture or agriculture to the machine, more momentous than the advent of computer information technology, something that's qualitatively different, an entirely new level. The Earth is excited about that. Bill was telling me that the heartbeat of the Earth, I think it's called the Schumann resonance, has speeded up in the last 20, 30 years. It used to be how many beats per minute or second?
I think it was, 8.7, now it's 12.
Wow.
Moving towards 13.
Yeah. And
It was 8.7 for thousands of years.
according to that article, yeah. Right, and so it's speeding up. And so the transition that we're on the verge of is not just another intensification of separation.